Oh boy, me and my friends are going to go leave the city and we're going to get a commune and live off grid and we're all going to live together and it's going to be great. You forgot about something. You forgot about something. There's a problem with that because as soon as enough people do that it has any amount of political power, they're just going to make a law that says you can't do it. That's how this whole thing works. They just make it up. They make up the rules. Have you heard about the enclosures, for example? Because there was a time, like the 14th, 15th century, end of the 15th century or something, where the government was like, a bunch of people died from Black Death, like a ton of people. And suddenly the peasants actually have it pretty good because there's fewer of them, so they have better leverage in negotiations for the cost of labor and stuff. And we don't like that the peasants have it very good. In fact, it's kind of just that they're getting a little snooty, you know? They're dressing like rich people. And we don't care for that. We have to show them who's in charge. So what do? Well, the enclosures. All that public land that just belongs to everybody that people are like able to make a subsistence living off of. Yeah, that's ours now. We own that. And we're just going to build fences around that, and we're going to build ditches around that, and we're going to build walls around that, and we're going to build hedgerows around that. And that's ours now. And in typical Israel fashion, that land wasn't just empty of people. Hundreds of thousands of people in England were living on that land. But what happened to them? Were they just like, oh, we can't live here anymore? No, the government went in and like killed them and forced them off it. Yeah, it's pretty much the gist of it. And they resisted. Like if you look up Ket's rebellion, there were like 16,000 people in a militia fighting the government's enclosures. They had artillery. They defeated a government army of 12,000 men. That's what was happening. They resisted this so intensely because they were like living on this land and the government was like, this is ours now. We're taking this. And you people, if you want to survive out there in the world, if you want to make your living, well, you need to be employed. You need to be making money. You can't just live on the land. That's crazy. It's what did they say? They said it was like just chaos and disorder is sort of nonsense. These people who had been living there like forever. So they took all the land. Oh, and then they made like anti-vagabond laws. So all those people who were like wandering around looking for work, if you were unemployed, the government made it legal for like private landlords to like detain you and use you for slave labor for their own purposes for a month. That was a law that they just made. They just make up the rules. That's how it works. That's the problem. The second you do something that gives you any amount of power that threatens their power, well, they're just going to make a rule. Let's make a new rule, you know, because they know that we're actually generally pretty reasonable, us peasants. We're reasonable people, you know, we're not going to revolt over anything. But yeah, they totally revolted. They were tearing down hedgerows. They were filling in ditches. There was a ton of that. But what happened to Ket's rebellion? Well, the government attacked them again, and this time massacred 3,500 people. I guess they weren't prepared. And those bodies just across the fields. So, and Ket, the guy who was running it, and his brother were strung up by the neck outside the walls of the town that they had taken over. So they're persistent. They're persistent. You see that kind of thing happening in like labor struggles and slave revolts and stuff. You see that exact kind of thing play out over and over and over where like, hey, these people are like actually starting to have a little bit of power. We need to crush this right now. That's what they're doing. It's class war. It's always been class war. Yeah, they just want to have power. That's the problem. So it like you can go live off grid, but if enough people do that, like they're going to make a rule that says you can't, you know, because they want power. And the way that they get power is by making you work more than you would ever need to. And then all the extra that you don't need, they take it. That's the whole arrangement. And where do they come from? Well, The capitalists right now are sort of descended from the feudal landlords, the people that you'd be like bonded to as a serf. But where do they come from? Well, they come from the remnants of the collapsing Roman Empire across Europe, where they basically just installed these like manors all over the place, and all the people who were living there were like bonded to that landlord, and they were slaves. So it's slavery. Oh, that's another thing about the enclosures, is that it was slavery. Everyone sort of associated, initially so they associated with like waged work with like an opportunity to better your conditions, you know? But once the enclosures happened and people were unable to survive in any way other than waged labor, it became associated with slavery. That's why we call it wage slavery. Anyway, read Caliban and the Witch. It's really good.
We need to see unemployment rise. Unemployment has to jump 40, 50% in my view. We need to see pain in the economy. We need to remind people that they work for the employer, not the other way around. I mean, there's been a systematic change where employees feel the employer is extremely lucky to have them, as opposed to the other way around. So it's a dynamic that has to change. We've got to kill that attitude, and that has to come through hurting the economy, which is what the whole global, the world is trying to do. The governments around the world are trying to increase unemployment to get that to some sort of normality. And we're seeing it. I think every employer now is seeing it. I mean, there is definitely massive layoffs going off. People might not be talking about it, but people are definitely laying people off, and we're starting